Welcome to the Less Consulting Puff podcast, episode number 7, with your host dragons Alisdair and Paul are joined by Peter Adams to discuss all things business transformation as a service.
We're joined today by Peter. Do you want to introduce yourself, Peter?
Hi, Peter Adams. So I'm a veteran SAP program leader and have been in the business for just over 25 years. If we go back to where I started as an end user, was an SAP finance consultant in the old days, back in the late 90s, early noughties, then picked up SAP project management and have been running programs since 2007.
Nice. What would you say the highlight of your illustrious career has been?
I would say that whichever program it's in, whichever project you're looking at, the highlight is always when it lands smoothly, and when your customers inside the organization are up running with the new ways of working, with the new systems, and it's boring and stress-free. No tears in the car park, and the benefits that you're trying to facilitate with the change that you're doing by implementing the new ways of working and the new systems start to be possible to realize and then get realized afterwards. So rather than point at anything specific, and that might sound a bit utopian, that's the ideal outcome, and happily it's happened on more than one occasion.
I think that's fantastic. So I'd like to give a shout out to Safe from First Rail. Had a really good, strong conversation with him earlier in the week, and we're going to do a podcast with him, myself and Paul. And he is their SAP system accountant who's taken them through some tremendous transformation. And just like you said, we did a load of work for First Rail, really pleased with the result. We've left them alone for a bit. We're probably going to be doing some stuff for them again. And we went back and had a really good conversation, and it was just like fantastic to hear about where they've got to since, how they're going from strength to strength, and just how that change has been embedded and sustained, and how he's grown as himself in terms of growing into that system accounting role with SAP. So I think that's spot on. Paul, you want to just introduce yourself as normal?
Paul Byrne. I've been doing business transformations, SAP implementations, call them by a lot of other names, for just over 27 years now. And not dissimilar to both of you, don't like the drama. Just get it done, get it boringly done. Yes, I shouldn't say this, but sometimes you want to maybe introduce a tiny little bit of drama, just so that it's seen that something is actually happening in the background, but that can be sort of mopped up quite easily. But I keep saying this, that SAP or any ERP doesn't make your organization money. It facilitates the business in running. So why is there so much drama around an implementation? Speaking to another customer that we've got, they've all been there for the last 27 years since they implemented it. Wonderful organization in the transport industry as well, but they still remember the pain that they went through 27 years ago. Yeah. And they're under pressure to go on, do we want to do this again? It's nuts.
And I think that's really interesting, because I think that's one of the levers SAP have got to work on in terms of the resistance to change from that legacy cow pool of ECC customers who just don't want to move to S4. Conversation for another day. Paul, you're also the proud father today of your own new group, the All Ireland SAP Collective, which you've launched and you're going to be going live with tomorrow. So you've got your own go live tomorrow. So congratulations with that. That's going to be fun. And then you got myself. I'm just an old SAP hobo. I've been doing it for 33 years, and I just enjoy SAP, I suppose. And I generally enjoy cutting the legs off of the SAP board, but that's a story for another day, isn't it? Paul's gone white. Oh God, well, we'll have to cut that out. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. Was really interesting because when Peter spoke to me about it last week, it made me not chuckle, but it did make me think, what does he mean? So today we're going to talk about business transformation as a service in context of SAP. And as Peter said earlier, it's a really nebulous title. So we're going to talk about that because it is a big thing in the SAP ecosystem. You hear about it more and more. You've also got the SAP enterprise architects, or as I call them, the cult of the clean core, who talk about business transformation as a service all the time, and also talk about business suite, but not the retro business suite dating back to the noughties. We're talking about the modern business suite, so it's out there, but I'm not sure that anybody really understands what we're talking about. So the first question, Peter, okay, so what do you mean by business transformation as a service?
Well, it's more a question of what does SAP mean by business transformation as a service, and is it a mechanism to facilitate RISE with SAP, which I believe it is, and so what would you use to kind of separate it out from RISE with SAP? It's then worth considering RISE with SAP itself. So SAP described that as a flexible solution to support your businesses in your industry in any geography for any regulatory requirement, and then that's the nebulous aspect of what we talked about earlier. So what we know about RISE with SAP is that it gives a one-stop shop, access to the cloud service, the subscription license usage, and then the combination of the tool set components. So S/4HANA Cloud, the Cloud Infra, the Business Transformation Platform BTP, and the Business Process Intelligence, the Signavio tool set and componentry. So it's actually very difficult to be clear and precise about the distinction between business transformation as a service and RISE with SAP itself. I think it's just a mechanism or a description of how you might go about moving on through RISE with SAP. What, if I may, would you say that your understanding has been since we started talking about this?
Yes, I did some research off the back of our conversation last week because I knew what SAP were talking about in terms of business transformation as a service, because RISE provides you with, RISE provides you with an infrastructure as a service. Working with the hyperscalers, they'll take you into infrastructure as a service. It provides you with the basic Signavio Navigator licensing. It provides, and it depends, because RISE is now multi-tier. You've got bucket shop RISE, and then you've got RISE Premium on the other end. RISE comes with LeanIX, it comes with Signavio, it comes now with Cloud ALM, it comes now with limited business. A business network, it comes now with Business Data Cloud and SAP, and it came with DataSphere anyway. So it comes with the wider business suite portfolio. So it's more than just ERP, it's sort of like ERP plus suite. It comes with the Activate methodology, it comes with a raft of tooling. So it tells you, gives you the infrastructure, and then it tells you how to get the best out of your software, and some of it's sort of like pseudo on-prem, which is PCE, and some of it's pure cloud. But I think what it misses is the fundamental. And so I think the fundamental is that SAP dances. So I'm so old, I've seen SAP dance in terms of it's either it's a tech company or it's a business transformation company, and SAP does tech, or SAP provides a best of breed target operating model. So what am I saying? I'm saying SAP sometimes say it's all about process, and it's all about process orchestration and making that process better and making organizations work better through interoperability and better productivity. And I think back in sort of like pseudo 2020, they did a big alliance with McKinsey. They've done alliances with Bain, which is all about that target operating model. That's why private equity love SAP so much, because you can tap and unwrap an SAP architecture, deploy it, and the organization can embed and sustain it and get going very, very quickly. So, and the whole point about bringing in the enterprise architects now was to say that SAP were now could explain to the C-suite the value of SAP from an operating model perspective and from a process perspective, and not from a technology perspective. So I think the business piece is all around a target operating model. But I think what Business Suite doesn't particularly do well is talk about, it's all about that, Tom. So the Signavio piece is not about going in and looking at your infrastructure. That's your Lean IX piece. In your enterprise architecture piece, your Signavio piece is all about understanding your as-is operating model, then understanding how you can then drive value from moving to SAP and other SAP elements as part of that transition. So I think RISE could be a one-stop shop if the value proposition optic was turned to it's all about your operating model. It's all about the process. Because if it's all about the process, then it's all about the data. You know, data doesn't come without process. So for me, I think business transformation as a service from an SAP perspective is them trying to make sense of A, what they are, and B, trying to then say, we're all about the process and this is how you can get value from your SAP investment and how you drive your business forward using SAP. And I just don't think they explain it particularly well. So that's my... Paul, what do you think? Business transformation as a service, what do you think it means from a SAP perspective?
It's a great question. I haven't done the business transformation course with SAP in Germany in 2015. I'm completely with you what you say. They flip and flop between technology and business. The course was all designed to be really good, if not theoretical, transformation methodologies. And then right after the course was finished, they took it internal, because that no external people were allowed, and then they dropped it completely.
Yeah.
So it's very much SAP don't know what to do with it, and they can't get away from the we're a software vendor that makes software in the background. But they forget all about the implementation. It's not negative about SAP because I don't want to be, and it's very, very easy for us to knock them. That's not the objective here. It's it's about, and excuse me for being corny. It's about how do we help the customer to start using this monolithic piece of software that they when you go into the requirements gathering, they want some of everything. And there's so many tools in that toolbox that they can't use them on day one. And even after 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, they're still not using all the tools because they can't. Nobody showed them how to use them properly.
Yeah. So are we saying then, going back to Peter, are we saying that SAP don't know what business transformation as a service is themselves and thus can't demonstrate the true value of it? Is that a fair statement, Peter, or do you see otherwise?
What I think is it's not that SAP don't necessarily understand, but I don't think that it's been communicated out into the world very clearly. And I think RISE arguably is business transformation as a service, the RISE program, the steps that you go through to move on to RISE. And so by interchanging these terms without saying something as simple as RISE is business transformation as a service, it's leading to the sort of confusion that we're sharing amongst ourselves now. And as veteran SAP professionals with lots of experience of getting this sort of stuff delivered, you'd think that it would be easier for us to be able to clarify and distinguish it than customer folks who don't have that experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just turn it on its head then, because so one of the reasons I set up Dragon with Paul was because I really saw the value of what Axon were doing, sort of like right at the beginning of the noughties, so Mark Hunter's vision. So Mark Hunter's vision was all about doing one thing really well, and that was leveraging SAP to deliver business transformation. And I think if you go back and look at the Axon model, and then you look at the model today, there's no difference. But Axon were all about business transformation. And what made a complex or like Fortune 2000 global transformation program in 2000 is no different from today. There's not a lot of difference. So I think it's about, there are a number of constituent parts to business transformation as a service. And they're all fundamentals. In some things you can do plug and play, but I think from a business transformation as a service, there's almost like a methodology which has got to be applied, which says there are just a few things you must do. You must have a vision. You must have a clear business requirements, which are holistic, including tech. There's all this stuff. You must have a really good idea of what your target operating model looks like. It can't be, I will adopt clean core fit standard S4 and hope that it's going to fit, when I've got a heavily bespoke RISE-F heavy ECC system, which is heavily automated. I'm just rolling the dice to hope that my S4 has got the same level of automation, because if I don't, I'm going backwards and I've got high TCO. So I just think there are just some fundamentals which make up business transformation as a service, which have always existed in the SAP domain, whether it was sort of like back in the 70s with R1, ICI, or today, those fundamentals aren't any different. So it's disappointing that SAP can't sort of like explain it. And we've just done a piece, as you probably know, with a large global company where we've explained the phase zero. And that phase zero was all built around a construct of business transformation service. And you can't really build out your business case unless you understand the totality of that transformation undertaking. And there are lots of constituent parts to it. So when we look at it, from an SAP perspective, that scenario thing is really important, because it does enable you to sort of like understand your as-is operating model, then go to the 2B, and then the tooling enables you to simplifications. But it enables the business to also say, what is my target operating model going to look like? And I think where we slightly deviate with SAP is that very few transformation programs in the SAP world are pure SAP.
Absolutely.
And that's a problem. They're
Exactly.
not pure SAP. And therefore, immediately, RISE can no longer be the business transformation as a service engine for your transformation program if it is only dealing with 70% of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
The last 7 years of my career, spanning 2 programs, have both included large proportions of non-SAP componentry. So the last one has included a manufacturing execution system, which wasn't anything to do with SAP. The one before that had a myriad of different front office commodity trading and risk management platforms, all bespoke designed to support different markets, different geographies, different product commodity families, and so on. So I completely agree. It's a significant challenge for RISE when you're co-implementing substantial non-SAP elements to it.
Yeah, and I think there's a problem statement which then comes out of it is that quite often the customer doesn't understand that they own the entire transformation.
Mm.
You know, they own it, not SAP, not the SAP SI. You know, there has to be a level of ownership, and
That's right.
therefore, for me, business transformation as a service is more methodology, and a service. But I think it's more methodology, and then I think SAP then have to think about how they then construct that as a pure service. Because I think I was having a tasty debate, wasn't I, Paul, the other day with a SAP VP about Grow. And they were saying that you can actually have S/4HANA public cloud in RISE, and I said, well, you can't because they're fundamentally different. But if you were to then take what we do with RISE as a business transformation as a service, and then say, whatever you do with RISE, you should do with Grow, because they're just because one's mid-tier and one's like BSAP, fundamentally what you do for a sort of like a global 100 and what you do for a corner store are both exactly the same. It's just scale and complexity. So if you're dropping down to the mid-tier, you'd expect Grow to be business transformation and service as well as Rises, and therefore what you get from a Rise contract in terms of infrastructure licensing, tooling, all that type of stuff, you'd expect to get from Grow. So one would hope that they're the same. I also would hope that the enterprise architects start to talk about business transformation as a service in terms of TOGAF, and where does TOGAF sit in it. And for me, TOGAF sits right at the beginning because it's the best way to describe the total sum of being delivered in construct of a product, even if it's one business domain, even if it's just a CR as part of a release. You need to be able to say people, process, technology, AI, what's being delivered, and then taking you through that whole business transformation piece. Because like you say, there could be even if it's a small piece, there's still the need for Signavio, there's still the need for Lean IX, there's still the need for licensing conversations, there's still the need in terms of InfoSec, still going to be data migration, so you need tooling for that. You know, still process control frameworks, still complex integration for which SAP even today is not particularly good. There's all those things, and then of course business change. So there's a lot of things you've got to think about. So for me, business transformation as a service should be almost a playbook of these are the total things you need to think about when you move your complex organization from whatever you're on at the moment, SAP and non-SAP, to your to-be state. And it starts with your Tom.
Absolutely. Yeah, fully agree. And it's interesting to reflect on what we mentioned earlier, the difference between business transformation and technology transformation. The transformation might be enabled by technology, but ultimately it's about transforming the business, and that requires you to have a clear view of what your operating model, your target operating model, is meant to involve.
I would hope that, because I love Christian Klein. I think what he's doing is tremendous. I think the Q3 investor briefing was very, very strong, and he's delivered ever since. So even though the SAP, we're in 2025 now and nowhere near being a cloud-centric organization, we're getting there. But I think you made a statement at the beginning, which is for you, RISE is business transformation as a service. And I think what I'd like SAP to do is shift conversation, because I wrote a blog, but I haven't published it because it's going into my newsletter for the end of March. But I wrote a bit about how S4 had become a bit of a soap opera for SAP over the last 10 years. And primarily because I was watching EastEnders' 40th anniversary at the time. And it just made me think, as you do, Paul, that SAP are going through a bit of a soap opera. And it's just about how S4 constantly is a soap opera in the SAP space around why are people not adopting the ECC bloodbath in 2027, where it won't be a bloodbath, and how eloquently flippant Christian Klein was. And I loved it, and I love him in terms of, okay, well, 2033 then, we don't care, because we've now got Business Suite, and Business Suite is all about saying we're going back to basics. They're our loyal customer base. If they don't want S4, we'll give them something else, but we're still going to sell to them, because by making them have to jump through hoops and feeling second class if they don't move to S4 is blocking us selling stuff to them. So now we're going to say, forget about S4 as a side show, as a soap opera. Forget about that. think business suite. What would you like from the business suite? What can we sell you? And when it's right to move to S4, you can move to S4. And I think the other thing we're seeing now is that AI is moving so quickly and sort of like AI agentic that you can see where the S4 replacement's going to be and how quickly S4 replacement is looming. And almost a lot of people predicting that S4's replacement will be with us by 2030. So again, let's stop talking about S4. Let's talk about business suite. And then let's talk about business transformation as a service in context of that whole business suite. So you think about it in terms of success factors, or think of it in terms of business network, or in terms of intelligent CX, as they've now rebranded it. Let's think of it in terms of the wider product suite, because then we're covering off all business domains, aren't we? Because it almost feels that the S4 conversation got very much shunted into back office because the manufacturing organizations didn't want to go nowhere near it. You know, and had a whole load of problems with S4. And so I'm just hoping that we could refine the message and make business transformation service business suite agnostic. That's my view. Paul, what do you think?
Okay, well, I was going to jump in a tiny little piece because you know where I referred to the organization we spoke to yesterday, who are 27 years ago.
Yep.
They were all involved. What they said to us yesterday was because they're looking at a brownfield implementation, but their board are not impressed at spending X millions on, and what are we getting for it? Well, actually nothing. So they've actually said, well, let's look at the opportunities where we can transform. Now that's very admirable from their point of view, but it's like an open checkbook to deal with your SI. Going, oh well, we can have this, you can have that, you can have an upside down one of those. In what color would you like it, sir? And it's an open ticket for the SI to do scope creep. So isn't it almost kind of going to the perfect storm of SAP doesn't know where it's going, and they do because they make a really good ERP system, but the way they sell it is horrific, and the customer's still got this naive perception of what they think it can do or what they think it should do for them.
Do you mind if I jump in with a response to that?
Go for it.
Because I think that's an excellent articulation of a risk, and the mitigations of that risk bring us back to the clear view of the target operating model that we want to try to achieve. The clearer, obviously, the better. As one mitigation. Another mitigation is the quality of the SI and the responsibility of the SI to not necessarily take it as an opportunity to develop scope for customization or anything like that, but to start to pathfind, as part of the scope definition, areas of standard SAP functionality that may not be available in the legacy application that could be activated as part of the implementation process. So it's less valuable potentially just activating more standard functionality for the SI, but a responsible SI should do that. And I think what we see too often, I dare say you both agree with this, is the lack of responsibility and the selfishness potentially of SIs driving towards customization and not simply turning new bits of the system on. And you could say, well, perhaps it would have been better to have activated that in the legacy application if it's available in the first place. But clearly there is a lot of newly available functionality in S4 compared to ECC6, and a responsible SI working with a clear view of what the target operating model should be, and therefore what the scope of their work should be, would hopefully mitigate that risk.
Go on. So I would sorry. Have you gone? If you a moment. Go on, please.
No, go on, Paul. Yeah.
So like really good point. And where are all these responsible SIs? This is the defining reason why we've started Dragon ERP, because we're not interested in land and expand, and we hate change controls. They're pointless, except it's, yes, it's naive of customers to go in for a fixed price delivery if you don't know what you want delivered in the first place, i.e. Tom.
Yeah.
So it's almost a perfect storm.
Yeah.
Can I play back a couple of bits? Okay, then we can bring it to a close. And I think there were two bits. So the first bit is risk. So my world's all about risk. Your world's all about risk, Peter. Yeah, it's all about risk. And I think one of the problems you have, and you talk about responsible SIs. I'm doing some stuff at the moment where there are a number of responsible SIs out there, but the tender procurement process drives them away.
Yes.
So you go long list, short list, final selection, okay, and procurement take the goodwill away. Procurement, in many instances, drive some of those behaviours. Now, I'm not saying that's right, but I'm also so procurement are a problem in terms of that whole SI behaviour piece, because you get to the point whereby some of these bigger SIs just feel there's no value in it for them because they're no longer collaborating. It's no longer a partnership. They're not a partner. They're just a vendor and a supplier. I think there's an issue in terms of doing the right things at the right time. So I think when you do the initial, you must do a proper phase zero. This construct that you don't need to understand your as is wrong. And the reason you must understand the as is because you need to have that conversation with the business in terms of where their pain points are. So you quite rightly said, Peter, about it's incumbent upon the SI to look at how they can take SAP and leverage SAP to fix business problems. Okay, so if there's new functionality, whatever it is, advanced ATP or whatever, can it fix a business problem? But I think it's always nice to understand what the problem statement is from the customer at the beginning, so you can start to think about those. So instead of sort of like playing back, this is what SAP could do for you, it's that, as you said, we can fix this problem for you. And it might be that we're not going to fix it on day one, as Paul said. You reach that situation whereby they just don't have the capacity or capability to support the transformation or sustain and embed that level of change at that point. But you can put it on their roadmap, can't you? That there's an opportunity going forward. I think one of the things which was in my head about business transformation as a service is this problem. And this will be my last sort of like bit about on this conversation about business transformation services. The problem I see is that moving from ECC to S4 or to S5 for many is not true business transformation. Okay. It is no more than a technical lift and shift. There's so maybe a software uplift, maybe a hosting uplift. It's more technical than it is functional. It's more about just being compliant in terms of you're in support. In a number of industries, you must be compliant. And I think back in the day, most sensible CIOs and CFOs used to work on a 4 to 5 year cycle whereby, regardless of what SAP was saying and what was going on, everybody knew that tech singularity in this space, sort of like your large organizations, means that every 4 to 5 years, regardless of where you are, that you are going to have a big refresh you have to do to your enterprise architecture, your tech estate, supporting your enterprise architecture, regardless. And that's something you've got to do as part of your investment in your tech. And it might not drive any business value whatsoever. So there is a once in every 5 years tech investment you've got to do, which enables you to keep up with tech singularity. And you might gain some value from it, but you might not. But it's not business transformation. And I think one of the problems you have with business transformation as a service being connected to RISE is for many people, RISE is nothing more than just being compliant in terms of ERP and supportability. and it doesn't really drive true business transformation. And you've got this mix going on, and that's why it's nebulous, because a brownfield S4 is not business transformation. The cult of the enterprise architects out there will say, naughty customer, you're wrong. CFOs are negligent if you don't move to S4. I think at a recent enterprise architecture forum, someone stood up, very, very senior from SAP, and said that an ECC system is grandma's sofa. But the customer's so attached to grandma's sofa, they don't want to get rid of it, which was just highly insulting. So I think one of the problems is that there's a lack of clarity around what business transformation really is. And it's not keeping your SAP estate compliant. It's not transformation.
Yeah. And I think that it's bringing it back to basics, worth reflecting on the fact that your SAP application set is an asset, like any other asset you might own. And if you take a car, your own car, that's an asset, clearly. You replace your vehicle after a period of time, maybe 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be. There is typically going to be a business case associated with changing your car of some sort. Maybe, bear with me, maybe it's vanity, but maybe it's efficiency, maybe it's a significant change in technology. So maybe you've adopted an EV, you've adopted a plug-in hybrid or something over an old internal combustion engine. It's moving. It's certainly got the compliance aspect in this analogy. Over the course of time, emissions regulations being what they are, you're going to be more compliant with ultra-low emission zones if you're not driving around in a 25-year-old diesel. And there's a significant cost involved. You're going to have lower maintenance costs, so you're boosting your compliance level. You're reducing your maintenance costs, arguably, by not having to pay for as many spare parts and things breaking on your 25-year-old diesel, etc. And I often think that people lose sight of the application set as being an asset and thinking of it in those sorts of terms. And clearly, if you've gone out and you've got your new shiny car, which has got a plug-in hybrid, then that's giving you an additional capability that you didn't have before. You can charge it and run it around on electric fuel rather than petrol or diesel, which is going to give you a payback in that it's cheaper for you to run in that way as well. But only if you actually actively understand that you want to use electric fuel and you figure out where you're going to be able to plug it in to charge it up, if you see what I mean.
I do, and I think that's a really good analogy, because I think we use something similar. So I think I repeatedly always say that SAP is a generational investment, okay? Yeah. And I think it is. And if you took that analogy, when I think the bulk of ECC customers are coming up to that point where they need to upgrade, whether it's a full a greenfield re-implementation or ECC is getting old. It's coming, it's getting really old now. It's going to be 25 years if you go up to 2033, it's old. So just in my context of it's due a refresh, there's the argument that it's due a refresh. So I think you're right, it is an asset. It's a generational investment, and I think there is no tech debt associated to working RISE-F. And that often gets forgotten about, but it is an investment. And I think there was an interesting statistic given out the other day, which is there is still 11,000 R3 instances live in the world. 11,000 R3s, Paul. Now,
can I just do something there to marry up both of your themes there? Alice, you were talking about a refresh every 5 years. Peter, you said about changing your car. There used to be the habit of people changing their car every 3 years. Now, but you've just bought a business case into changing your car. emission zones or whatever, hybrid benefits, whatever. But there was the standard going, okay, I cannot have a car more than 3 years of age, um, otherwise it will lose value. But now you're adding a benefits case to that decision to change a car rather than a habit of changing a car. While Alisdair, you were going about the tech refresh, should be a habit, but could we not also look at the benefits case of the tech refresh?
I think that's a really good point. And from my perspective, 25 years ago, working with the CFO at Philip Morris, which was sort of like Fortune number 7 at the time, they were already sort of like SaaS costing. They were already putting all their costs through OPEX in terms of the entire SAP estate. And it was sort of like 50 production SAP instances just for Europe. I don't think you should. I just think that everything is as a service. And I think you should be able to clearly define that every year you've got your run costs for SAP, and you should also invest in there in terms of accruing an upgrade every 5 years. And therefore it's done, it's accrued. You've put the money aside because you know you're going to have to do something on the tech side where there's no business value. It's just part of the cost of ownership. You talk about, Peter, the cost of ownership goes down when you move to cloud. Doesn't really. I mean, for many SAP customers, they've underinvested so much in their tech over the years. They've run it low. Moving to the cloud actually brings more cost out than it goes down. But I think keep the tech refresh to one side, because you need to do that, Paul. It's a cost of ownership. I mean, the cost of ownership for SAP has been understated probably, and that's the issue. And you've had to mix doing a move to S4 with also the transformational benefits, because the transformation benefits of S4 are sustainability control tower, green ledger, really important, fantastic innovation there, going into sort of like, supply chain space in terms of advanced available to promise, moving APO into integrated business planning. The benefits are just vast. SAP often lose sight of the benefits because of the soap opera around S4. Make S4 a tech refresh as part of your total cost of ownership for owning this complex enterprise architecture. It takes away those steamy conversations around where the value is in moving to S4. And it probably isn't any, because you're going to have a situation, Peter, where those customers who are on R3 and ECC are going to sit back now because they're intelligent. There's this construct that the SAP customers aren't an intelligent, mature customer. They really are, especially if they're running an ECC or an S4 and R, whatever. They're mature customers. They understand where tech's going. They understand tech singularity. They understand AI and where it's going. And they're sitting back and thinking, do you know what? I can sit on my ECC now. I can sit back. Christian says I'm okay to 2033. Rimini Street says they can support me. I might have a problem with GTS and APO, which I can deal with in the interim. I'll sit back and I'll see where AI goes next, because probably I'll be able to drop AI all around my ECC estate. And I gave Paul yesterday a piece coming in from Azure, who are very, very cheekily calling out all the AI and data assets you can drop around your RISE Azure hosted S4. So doing a whole load of upsell in terms of Azure tooling if you're on Azure S4 PCE with RISE. And I just thought that was fantastic, because they're really targeting the ECC customers, saying, move your ECC to Azure, which a lot of people have done anyway, or GTS or AWS. Move your ECC so you're on the cloud. You've got that benefit. And once you're on the cloud, you are going to get all those AI services. You're going to get your data fabric. You don't need DBC. You don't need AI Foundation. You can go to a hyperscaler. And that's going on as well. So I think business transformation as a service has got to be about surfacing where the business value is, and not about moving your infrastructure into an SAP hosted data center, which nobody cares about. Have you ever heard a CFO care about where they're hosted? They don't care. They just want the value. They want to close, don't they? They want to close daily. They don't care about anything else.
Yeah, I agree. I think you may have rather over-inferred what I was saying about the car analogy and saving money with a new vehicle onto the idea of moving SAP into the cloud and saving money in that. I fully agree that that's not a cost saving measure at all. It's actually a disbenefit of RISE.
Absolutely, total disbenefit. Yeah.
So just to clear that up. But I think what you just said brings us back to the notion that to try to maximize the benefit out of that essential tech cost, you do need to have a clear view of your target operating model and what it is that you want to try to make use of to facilitate more benefit that's now available in the new version of the application that wasn't there in the ECC setup that you've been moving away from.
So do you think in summary, there's a piece which says, going forward, business transformation as a service adds absolute value to the customer, because as we move forward, the customer wants faster innovation. So they're going into faster and quicker and smarter innovation cycles as AI drops in, and they start to want to get greater and greater value quicker and quicker and quicker. So they want to see that business, they want to see a mature methodology which drives out the value and delivers the value quickly. And BTaaS does that, doesn't it?
Yes, I think so. Again, as long as you know what you want to get out of it. So we've talked about target operating models. I think it demands that you've got a clear IT and application strategy that marries up to your business strategy to help you realize that strategy through the transformation process. So thinking back to some of my earliest program experience, they had that particular customer organization a set of very clearly articulated business strategies, e.g. in HR, win the war for talent, in procurement, a strategy with a headline name of contracting for excellence. And then underneath that, different sets of activity that they wanted to improve on and do better. And that gave a foundation from which to develop a SAP application strategy. Okay, so winning the war for talent, let's talk about succession planning. Let's talk about how we advertise the roles, how we recruit people, how we get the best quality people to join our organization, which are the currently available SAP tools that we can then make absolutely sure constitute part of our scope. They're woven into our target operating model. And so then we know that we're going to set out to activate the correct standard functionality. Just to repeat what I said earlier, it's not necessarily about customizing things. It should be possible to maintain the clean core, as long as you accept, of course, that the SAP standard is the best you're going to get. Then embrace that SAP standard and use it if you weren't already doing so. And that becomes part of the benefit case driver to support the investment in the first place.
Here's a good point. But sorry, Peter. Sir, good point. Is SAP best practice the best there possibly is? No, it's not. It's SAP's best practice, but it is still good enough for now, because I am very passionate about the fact that rip and replace does not work. Because you'll just get Oracle's best practice or Infor's best practice or whoever's best practice, and they're all fine. But it's not your best practice for your organization.
There used to be, you may have heard this before, and I certainly won't claim ownership of it, an amusing equation that was put around the place to encourage this way of thinking. It ran like this: NT plus OO equals EOO. New technology plus old operation equals expensive old operation. I think that kind of just summarizes the thing.
Same thing in a shiny new box.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's all right. And I think sometimes you need the shiny new box because you have to. I mean, so that's part of your 5-year cycle. You'd expect that. But I think is SAP best of breed? I think in many ways it is. I mean, I think if you speak to people in terms of the infrastructure pace, it's probably not, because I think the infrastructure as a service is worse than if you've gone from a hyperscaler. You hear stories all the time. We've got clients who've gone from AWS to AWS and Rise and seen poorer service, even though they're essentially in the same data center. But I think from a process perspective, I think there are a number of reasons to say SAP is best practice. One, McKinsey, Bain and Boston say it is. They love it. It's a tick in the box. If those guys say it's pretty much as good as you get, private equity says it's as good as you get. But I think when you also add on to it the industry solutions as well, I think you're in a pretty good place. Now, there's always going to be a need for some form. I'm not saying I do believe in clean core, actually. I know I'm always going on about SAP are mad about clean core, but I think clean core is important. But I also think listening to the customer in terms of sometimes there is a niche requirement to do some level of customization. And we've seen some clients do good customization and bad customization. But I think ultimately SAP is best breed. I think SAP is best breed. I think Activate came from, where did Activate came from? It came from
ASAP.
ASAP, yeah. Came from ASAP. Axon had AppSy, which was their own version. It is everything about SAP is best practice. You can't go wrong with SAP Business Transformation as a service if you embrace it. But as long as you're the intelligent client, you understand what BTaaS brings to the party. And then I think, Peter, what's important is understanding your own obligation, because you spoke about the obligation of the SI, but I think the customer's got an obligation to success and to really understand what are they getting into with SAP and Business Transformation as a service, and what do they need to do to make it a success. And I think that's what myself and Paul do really well, is actually saying to the customer, here's your obligation. This is what you've got to do. And an obligation is different from a dependency. So obligations are a dependency, but not in the same construct. So there's a whole load of obligations the customer must acknowledge and accept when they get in bed with Business Transformation as a service. And I just think it's as simple as that. Then I think it's a win-win for the customer. I do like BTaaS. It's just with all the money and comms team and gleamy, shiny young people SAP have got, they struggle sometimes to connect simple constructs. The business transformation service is not complex. I mean, if I can understand it, anyone can. It's not complex, but they just don't seem to be able to connect it with the customer. And I just wish they would better, because then it's win-win-win.
I think that's a really, really important point that you've made there. The risk when engaging with any service is that you feel that it obviates your own ownership responsibility, and you have to actively mitigate that risk. I fully agree. You cannot, as a customer, ignore your responsibility to own your role in the transformation. So buying business transformation as a service can't be seen as any sort of substitute for your own enduring responsibility in that process.
Absolutely. I mean, I think fundamentally, if a customer can't come with a light vision statement and initial requirement traceability matrix and benefit case just to start off with, then I think they should be thinking long and hard before they go anywhere near sort of like SAP BTaaS. I do
have to say that whilst broadly speaking, SAP as a product set, certainly best in class as a whole, we mustn't ignore either that in reality, we only have to look back over SAP's own product history over the last 15, 20 years to know that SAP's set of applications has grown through acquisition, yes, in some cases, of course, and therefore, by definition, what SAP had before they acquired something like, let's say, OutlookSoft or Ariba clearly wasn't best in class, which is what prompted them to then go and make the investment that they made to add to their product set. And that remains the case in some areas. Workforce scheduling, for example, manufacturing execution systems, commodity trading and risk management systems. There are going to be areas where the SAP product set simply isn't the best in class. So I do agree that overall there isn't a better set of, but it isn't always going to give you the best in class in some specific areas, and that's why my answer earlier to the question, is it always best in class? Well, it may have been a rhetorical question, sorry, Paul,
No.
But what was no, it isn't, because yes, globally, yes, as a set, definitely it's the best set, but it doesn't do everything as well as some of the alternative specialty smaller systems.
And I think you're right. And I think one of the risks an organisation can make, Evan, I think we'll wrap it up with this, is an organisation can constantly seek best of class.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is that when you look at holistically at your enterprise architecture, in many instances, you're better off leveraging as much of SAP, which is best, it's in many instances best of class. In some areas, it's dross. But I think the more you can consume of SAP, the more you reduce your risk in terms of issues in terms of interoperability. And I almost see it's almost like your rugby team, Paul. In terms of, to beat the French, the Irish need a team of loads of really good average players, but then a couple of really best of class players as well. And I think that's the same for your enterprise architecture. A lot of what SAP does is pretty average, but in some areas it totally excels, doesn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
But then, so that if I could wrap it up put a bow on that, 80-20. If it's still an 80% of what you need, then it's good enough.
Absolutely. Yeah. And going back to old tropes with my funny equation earlier, the other one we might reflect on is that the best is sometimes the enemy of the good. And
absolutely. I mean, I just think I do get your point. I mean, I think SAP's always led through acquisition, and then it refreshes itself through acquisition. And I think if you look at that, the area where it seems to have fallen down was in that core ERP space, where it lost its focus around being all things around the target operating model and about process, and became consumed with becoming a database rival to Oracle when it didn't need to. And we lost a lot of momentum between ECC 6 and where we've got to now with PCE sort of like 2022, which is for me beginning of best of breed. We lost a load of momentum over those 7 or 8 years in terms of fixating on trying to make the argument for HANA DB and sort of like universal journal, opposed to building out a best of breed, best of class ERP solution, which I think sort of like PCE is now, and I certainly think public cloud is now.
But was that not a jealousy thing? I think we can't give that much money to Larry for all his databases. We can develop our own database.
I thought it was a strategy. I think it was a strategy thing where they wanted to take Oracle out, whereby they'd already won the battle around Siebel. So CRM7 came in and beat Siebel, and I think they just wanted to cut Larry's legs and win the Oracle, the DB space, and dominate that. And I think they didn't need to, because no one cares about the DB. I mean, all right, some people might, but the reality is CFOs and no one. CFOs write the check ultimately for the transformation, and they don't care about DB. It's just a database, isn't it? It's just Excel.
Just keep it up. Righto.
Thank you, Pete. Good conversation.
Thank you both too. Yeah, been a pleasure.
Been stimulating, Paul. Thank you very much. And
as usual,
good luck with your launch tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much.
Right, let's